Throughout the history, human believed in gods and demons, and those humans who borrow powers from the darkness and worship devils called witches, sorcerers, shamans, witch doctor, and warlocks. Witchcraft, as most commonly understood in both historical and present-day communities, is the use of alleged supernatural powers of magic. Those people who wield magic or supernatural powers is a practitioner of witchcraft. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, witchcraft, thus defined, exists more in the imagination of contemporaries than in any objective reality. Yet this stereotype has a long history and has constituted for many cultures a viable explanation of evil in the world. The belief in witchcraft has been found in a great number of societies worldwide. Anthropologists have applied the English term witchcraft to similar beliefs in occult practices in many different cultures, and societies that have adopted the English language have often internalized the term. Images of witches have appeared in various forms throughout history from evil. Most people think that witches are a Christian invention, but the idea of the witch who flies in the night and draws power from dark cosmic forces to work her ill will on others predates Christianity, probably by many centuries. So where did the name witchcraft start? The terms witchcraft and witch derive from Old English word wixecraft, from wicca mean masculine or wix mean feminine, pronounced witcha and witcha respectively, denoting someone who practices sorcery, and from craft meaning craft or skill. Roughly equivalent words in other European languages, such as sorcellery from French, hexeray from German, strigonaria Italian word of witchcraft, brujeria from Spanish, and mancuculum from Philippine. The difficulty is even greater with the relevant words in another country like Africa, Asian countries, and other languages. The problem of defining witchcraft is made more difficult because the concepts underlying these words also change according to time and place, sometimes radically. Moreover, different cultures do not share a coherent pattern of witchcraft beliefs, which often blend other concepts such as magic, sorcery, religion, folklore, theology, technology, and diabolism. Some societies regard a witch as a person with inherent supernatural powers mostly used to inflict harm or misfortune on others. Another Old English word for witch was hagdes or hagtess, which became the modern English word hag and is linked to the word hex. In most other Germanic languages, their word for witch comes from the same root as these, for example, German hex and Dutch hex. Its Proto-Germanic form is reconstructed as hagatoshan, whose origin is unclear. The modern spelling witch with the medial T first appears in the 16th century. Old English had both masculine Wicca and feminine Wix forms of the word, but the masculine meaning became less common in Standard English, being replaced by words like warlock and wizard. What does witchcraft mean? The most common meaning of witchcraft worldwide is the use of harmful magic or practitioner of malevolent magic to inflict disease, illness, or bad luck to others. Especially a woman who is credited with having usually malignant supernatural powers. Witchcraft beliefs about practices. Witches are commonly believed to cast curses or a spell or set of magical words and gestures intended to inflict supernatural harm. Cursing could also involve inscribing runes or sigils on an object to give that object magical powers, burning or binding a wax or clay image, a puppet of a person to affect them magically, or using herbs, animal parts, and other substances to make potions or poisons. Witchcraft has been blamed for many kinds of misfortune. In Europe, by far the most common kind of harm attributed to witchcraft was illness or death suffered by adults, their children, or their animals. Certain ailments, like impotence in men, infertility in women, and lack of milk in cows, were particularly associated with witchcraft. The illnesses that were poorly understood were more likely to be blamed on witchcraft. Edward Bever writes witchcraft was particularly likely to be suspected when a disease came on unusually swiftly, lingered unusually long, could not be diagnosed clearly, or presented some other unusual symptoms. A common belief in cultures worldwide is that witches tend to use something from their target's body to work magic against them, for example, hair, nail clippings, clothing, or bodily waste. Such beliefs are found in Europe, Africa, South Asia, Polynesia, Melanesia, and North America. Another widespread belief among indigenous peoples in Africa and North America is that witches cause harm by introducing cursed magical objects into their victim's body, such as small bones or ashes. James George Frazer described this kind of magic as imitative. In some cultures, witches are believed to use human body parts in magic, and they are commonly believed to murder children for this purpose. In Europe, cases in which women did undoubtedly kill their children because of what today would be called postpartum psychosis were often interpreted as yielding to diabolical temptation. Witches are believed to work in secret, sometimes alone and sometimes with other witches. Hutton writes across most of the world, witches have been thought to gather at night when normal humans are inactive and also at their most vulnerable in sleep. In most cultures, witches at these gatherings are thought to transgress social norms by engaging in cannibalism, incest, and open nudity. Witches around the world commonly have associations with animals. The English social anthropologist Rodney Needham identified this as a defining feature of the witch archetype. In some parts of the world, it is believed witches can shape-shift into animals, or that the witch's spirit travels apart from their body and takes an animal form, an activity often associated with shamanism. Another widespread belief is that witches have an animal helper. In English, these are often called familiars and meant an evil spirit or demon that had taken an animal form. As researchers examine traditions in other regions, they widen the term to servant spirit animals, which are described as a part of the witch's own soul. Practitioner of witchcraft. Mang Babarang. The Mang Babarang is the Bisayan version of a sorcerer or sorceress who uses insects and spirits to enter the body of any person they hate. Mang Babarang are ordinary human beings with black magic who torture and later kill their victims by infesting their bodies with insects like beetles, centipedes, cicadas, mantis, and flies. They are different from Mankukulams, the latter only inflict pain or illness. Mang Babarang use a strand of hair from their chosen victim and tie it to the bugs or worms which they will use as a medium. When they prick the bug, the victim immediately experiences the intended effect. The name is derived from the word barang. In legends, the Mang Babarang keeps his swarm of carnivorous beetles in a bottle or a section of bamboo, carefully feeding them ginger root. When the practitioner decides to employ his dark art, he performs a prayer ritual wherein he whispers instructions and identifies the victim to the beetles. The destructive insects are then set free and to seek out the victim and gain entry into the body via any bodily orifice: the nose, mouth, ears, anus, or dermal breaks such as open sores, wounds. The victim will then feel the effects of the invasion of the insects through manifestations depending on the area of entry: hemorrhoids, if through the anus, earache, if through the ears, and other similar cases. The resulting illness is supposedly resistant to conventional medical treatment and only reveals its true nature when the victim succumbs and flying insects issue forth from bodily cavities. In reality, it is possible a carnivorous beetle could lay eggs in someone it killed, and the eggs would then hatch post-mortem. Superstitious folks still attribute certain illnesses or diseases to barang. This most often happens in the provinces, where an herbal doctor, albulario, or a faith healer, a manambol or sorjuana means female and sorjuano means male, treats such diseases. In some rural provincial areas, people completely rely on the albulario and manambol for treatment. Mankukulam. A mankukulam can be considered a Filipino witch, literally meaning a practitioner of kulam. A curse is called a sumpa, which can also be translated as a vow or oath and curse. A mankukulam may use a voodoo doll and a needle to cast spells on people they want to take revenge on, but largely use natural magic and superstition similar to an arbulario or witch doctor. Both can be considered witches, but the main difference is that the albulario is more of a doctor who heals people, while a mankukulam is a malevolent person who tricks and curses others. The primary methods employed by a mankukulam are candle lighting rituals, scrying or tawas, recitation of spells, and concocting potions. Healer sorcerers who practice kulam usually justify it as a form of criminal punishment, as a widespread belief is that black magic does not work on people who are innocent. Their targets are usually wrongdoers like thieves, adulterous spouses, or land grabbers. There are also true sorcerers who are said to have hereditary sorceress powers. Unlike healers, they do not consider the justice of their actions. The latter type of sorcerers are often conflated with the evil supernatural beings capable of appearing human, like a Swang and Manananggal. Modern popular culture also depicts the mankukulam as using either photographs or the equivalent of a voodoo doll. The practices of the mankukulam can bring about a range of effects on their targets, including ailments that modern medicine struggles to cure, emotional or mental distress for loved ones, diminished mental acuity, sleep disturbances, loss of appetite, unexpected accidents, and various inexplicable occurrences. The mankukulam are widely believed to possess covert powers capable of inflicting harm. Modern popular culture also depicts mankukulam as mainly doing only love potions and malicious curses, but more extreme depictions claim they can summon ghosts to haunt dolls, raise the dead or at least control dead bodies, and other things related to necromancy. Witch doctor. A witch doctor was originally a type of healer who treated ailments believed to be caused by witchcraft. These individuals are often respected for their knowledge of herbs, rituals, and spiritual practices that are believed to heal physical and spiritual ailments. The term is now more commonly used to refer to healers, particularly in regions which use traditional healing rather than contemporary medicine. In its original meaning, witch doctors were not exactly witches, but rather people who had remedies to protect others against witchcraft. The sorcerer. A sorcerer is typically depicted as a practitioner of magic who derives their power through mystical means, often involving spells, rituals, and incantations. They were often perceived as individuals who practiced magic outside of established religious or spiritual traditions. They were sometimes associated with witchcraft or occult practices, depending on the cultural and religious beliefs of the time. Sorcerers are often distinguished from other magic users such as wizards or witches. While wizards typically learn and study magic through books and formal education, sorcerers are often depicted as innate magic users who possess an inherent natural ability to wield magical powers. Warlock. A warlock is a male practitioner of witchcraft or dark magic. In medieval and early modern Europe, a warlock was often seen as a male witch, typically associated with practicing malevolent or harmful magic. The term was used to denote someone who had made a pact with evil forces or spirits to gain supernatural powers. Warlocks were typically feared and persecuted due to beliefs that they used their powers for harmful purposes, such as cursing others, causing illnesses, or manipulating natural phenomena for destructive ends. Wizard. A wizard is typically portrayed as a male practitioner of magic or sorcery, often depicted in fantasy literature, folklore, and mythology. Wizards are known for their deep knowledge and mastery of magical arts, which they use to manipulate supernatural forces for various purposes. Wizards are wise and learned individuals who possess deep understanding of the arcane arts, history, and sometimes philosophy. They often serve as advisors or mentors in stories. White Witch. The White Witch, also known as a good witch or a light witch, is a practitioner of witchcraft who follows a moral and ethical code focused on using their magical abilities for benevolent purposes and positive outcomes. The term white in this context symbolizes purity, goodness, and the intention to bring healing, protection, and harmony to oneself and others. White witches often specialize in healing practices, including physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. They may use herbs, crystals, energy work, and rituals to promote health and well-being for themselves and others. They focus on protective magic to ward off negative energies, curses, and harm. They may create protective amulets, charms, or perform rituals to safeguard individuals or homes. Many white witches practice divination techniques such as tarot reading, scrying, or rune casting to gain insights, guidance, and clarity on life's challenges and decisions. The eclectic witch. An eclectic witch is someone who practices witchcraft by drawing from various traditions, beliefs, and practices, rather than adhering to one specific tradition or lineage. Eclectic witchcraft emphasizes personal spiritual exploration and freedom, allowing practitioners to incorporate elements from different cultures, historical periods, and magical systems into their own unique practice. They often blend elements of different traditions and rituals, such as Wicca, traditional witchcraft, ceremonial magic, shamanism, and more, based on personal preferences. Eclectic witch create their own rituals, spells, and correspondences based on their intuition and experiences. Fairy witch. The fairy witch, also known as a fairy witch or fey witch, is someone who practices a form of witchcraft that focuses on working with and honoring the fae or fairies. This practice is deeply rooted in folklore, mythology, and the spiritual traditions that involve the beings often associated with nature spirits, guardians of the land, or magical entities. Fairy witches believe in and work with various types of fairy beings, which can include sprites, elves, gnomes, dragons, nymphs, pixies, and other nature spirits. They may form relationships with these beings through offerings, rituals, and acts of respect. The rituals and spells in fairy witchcraft often involve invoking or communing with fae beings for assistance in matters such as healing, protection, and guidance. Offerings of food, milk, honey, or shiny objects are common in rituals to honor and appease the fae. Solitary witch. A solitary witch is someone who practices witchcraft alone, without belonging to a coven or group. They typically perform rituals, spells, and other magical practices independently, often developing their own traditions and methods based on personal beliefs, intuition, and experiences. Solitary witches may study various aspects of witchcraft, such as herbalism, divination, meditation, and ritual magic, drawing from a wide range of sources including books, online resources, and personal experimentation. The solitary path allows for flexibility and autonomy in spiritual and magical exploration, catering to individual preferences and needs. The hedge witch. The hedge witch is a practitioner of witchcraft who works primarily with herbalism, plant lore, and folk magic. The term hedge originally referred to the boundary between the human world and the spirit realm or wilderness, and hedge witches are believed to navigate this boundary skillfully. They often have a deep connection to nature and the natural world, using herbs, plants, and other natural materials in their spells and rituals. The hedge witches are known for their intuitive and practical approach to magic, drawing on traditions rooted in European folklore and folk medicine. They may work alone or within small informal groups, and their practices can vary widely depending on individual beliefs and preferences. Some hedge witches may also incorporate elements of divination, healing, and shamanic practices into their craft. Traditional witch. The traditional witch is a practitioner who follow older, pre-modern forms of witchcraft that are rooted in historical European traditions. Traditional witches often draw inspiration from folk magic, herbalism, and cultural practices that predate modern Wicca and other organized forms of witchcraft. Traditional witches often work with folk magic practices passed down through generations, including the use of herbs, charms, and rituals for healing and protection. They may also engage in practices involving communication with ancestors, spirit guides, or other spiritual entities. They may honor and seek guidance from these beings in their magical workings. Hereditary witch. The hereditary witch is someone who practices witchcraft within a family tradition that is passed down through generations. Unlike solitary or traditional witches who may choose their path independently, hereditary witches inherit their magical practices, beliefs, and rituals from their ancestors or within their family lineage. Hereditary witches typically belong to families where witchcraft or magical practices have been passed down orally or through written records across generations. This lineage is considered sacred and is often a source of pride and responsibility for the practitioner. They often have a strong connection to their ancestors and may work with ancestral spirits or guides in their magical practice. Ancestral wisdom and teachings are valued and respected as sources of guidance and spiritual insight. The ceremonial witch. A ceremonial witch is someone who practices witchcraft through structured and ritualized ceremonies, often drawing on ceremonial magic traditions that have historical roots in Western occultism. This form of witchcraft places a strong emphasis on symbolism, ritual precision, and spiritual discipline. Ceremonial witches follow a structured approach to magic that often includes elaborate rituals, invocations, and the use of ceremonial tools such as wands, daggers or A-teams, pentacles, and ritual robes. Many ceremonial witches draw inspiration from Hermeticism, Kabbalah, alchemy, and other occult traditions. They may study ancient texts such as the Key of Solomon. Ceremonial witches often work with specific deities, angels, or spirits, invoking them for guidance, protection, and assistance in magical workings. The kitchen witch. A kitchen witch is someone who practices a form of witchcraft that is centered around the home, particularly the kitchen and its activities. This type of witchcraft emphasizes practical magic and everyday rituals that involve cooking, herbalism, and creating a sacred space within the home. They believe that preparing food can be a magical act. They infuse their cooking with intention, using herbs, spices, and other ingredients to enhance the magical properties of meals. Cooking becomes a way to nourish not only the body but also the spirit. Kitchen witches often cultivate herbs and plants for culinary and magical purposes. They may create herbal remedies, teas, or charms using herbs grown in their kitchen gardens or collected from nature. Green witch. The green witch is someone who practices a form of witchcraft that is closely connected to nature and the earth. This type of witchcraft emphasizes living in harmony with the natural world and using the magic and energy of plants, herbs, stones, and natural elements for healing, spell work, and spiritual growth. Green witches have a deep knowledge of herbs and plants, both magical and medicinal. They may cultivate their own herb gardens and use plants in spells, potions, teas, and healing remedies. Rituals in green witchcraft often take place outdoors and are aligned with the cycles of nature, such as the phases of the moon, seasonal changes, and natural phenomena. These rituals may involve honoring nature spirits, conducting ceremonies for healing or protection, or celebrating festivals that mark agricultural or astronomical events. Wiccan. The Wicca is a modern pagan religious movement that was developed in England during the first half of the 20th century and has since spread throughout the world. It is a nature-based religion that reveres the natural world and emphasizes personal spiritual growth, harmony with nature, and the worship of deity or deities. Wiccans typically worship a god and goddess, often representing the divine masculine and feminine principles of nature. These deities may be seen as symbolic of natural forces or archetypes, and their worship is often centered around rituals, celebrations, and seasonal observances. Wicca recognizes the Wheel of the Year, which consists of 8 seasonal festivals, also known as Sabbats. These include Samhain, Yule, Imbolc, Ostara, Beltane, Litha, Lammas, and Mabon. These festivals celebrate seasonal changes, agricultural cycles, and spiritual themes. The pagan witch. A pagan witch is someone who practices witchcraft within the broader framework of paganism. Paganism is an umbrella term that encompasses a wide variety of earth-based and polytheistic spiritual traditions, often rooted in ancient or pre-Christian religious practices. Within paganism, witchcraft is typically seen as a magical and spiritual practice that can be integrated into religious worship or pursued independently. Pagan witches often have a deep reverence for nature and the natural world, viewing it as sacred and imbued with spiritual energy. They may celebrate seasonal festivals, honor nature spirits, and work with natural elements in their magical practices. Also, pagan witches worship multiple deities or see the divine as immanent in nature pantheism. These deities may be ancient gods and goddesses from various cultures or personal spiritual guides and guardians. Pagan witches practice magic, often referred to as witchcraft, or spell work as a means of manifesting change, connecting with spiritual energies and honoring the divine. Rituals may involve chanting, dancing, meditation, and the use of symbolic tools such as candles, crystals, and herbs. Moon Witch. The Moon Witch is a practitioner of witchcraft whose magical practice is centered around the phases of the moon and lunar energies. This type of witchcraft emphasizes the cycles of the moon, its influence on nature, and its symbolic significance in spiritual and magical workings. Moon witches work closely with the different phases of the moon, new moon, waxing moon, full moon, and waning moon, as each phase is believed to have distinct energies and influences. They may time their rituals, spells, and magical workings according to the phase of the moon to enhance their effectiveness. They draw upon the symbolic meanings associated with the moon in various cultures and mythologies. The moon is often associated with feminine energy, intuition, psychic abilities, emotions, dreams, and cycles of growth and transformation. Moon witchcraft often honors the divine feminine and the mysteries of womanhood, fertility, and lunar goddesses such as Selene, Artemis, Hecate, and Diana, among others. These goddesses are often invoked or honored in rituals dedicated to lunar energies. Sun Witch. The Sun Witch is a practitioner of witchcraft whose magical practice is centered around the sun and solar energies. This type of witchcraft emphasizes harnessing the power, vitality, and transformative energies associated with the sun. They work with the energy and symbolism of the sun, which is often associated with vitality, life force, growth, abundance, clarity, and enlightenment. They may draw upon these energies in rituals, spells, and meditation to bring about positive change and personal empowerment. Sun witches may work with solar symbols, such as the solar cross, sunflowers, gold or yellow candles, and representations of solar deities from various mythologies. Solar deities such as Ra from Egyptian mythology, Helios from Greek mythology, Sol from Roman mythology, and Surya from Hindu mythology may be honored or invoked in rituals. The Shadow Witch. Shadow witches engage in shadow work, which involves deep introspection, self-awareness, and confronting aspects of the self that are often hidden or suppressed. This work may include exploring childhood wounds, past traumas, fears, and negative patterns of behavior. They believe in integrating and healing the shadow self to achieve wholeness and balance. This process may involve rituals, meditation, journaling, and therapeutic techniques to acknowledge, accept, and transform shadow aspects into sources of personal strength and wisdom. Shadow witches may work with dark goddesses or archetypal figures that symbolize aspects of the shadow self, such as Hecate, Kali, Lilith, and the Morrigan. These deities are often revered for their wisdom, transformative power, and ability to guide individuals through the shadow realms. Cosmic Witch. The Cosmic Witch is a practitioner of witchcraft whose spiritual practice is centered around the cosmos, celestial bodies, and cosmic energies. This type of witchcraft emphasizes the interconnectedness of all things in the universe and seeks to align with the rhythms and energies of the cosmos. Cosmic witches often incorporate astrology into their practice, studying the movements and positions of celestial bodies such as planets, stars, and the moon to understand their influence on earthly events and personal energies. They may use birth charts, horoscopes, and planetary alignments to guide magical workings and rituals. Like moon witches, cosmic witches pay close attention to the phases of the moon and its influence on magical energies. They may work with lunar cycles to enhance rituals, spellcraft, and personal growth, aligning their intentions with the energetic qualities of each lunar phase. The Sea Witch. The Sea Witch is a practitioner of witchcraft whose spiritual practice and magic are centered around the sea, ocean, and maritime environments. This type of witchcraft focuses on harnessing the energies and elements associated with the sea and its natural surroundings. Sea witches have a deep connection to water in all its forms: oceans, seas, rivers, lakes, and even rain. They may draw energy from water for healing, cleansing, and purification rituals. They often work with deities and spirits associated with the sea, such as sea gods and goddesses, water nymphs, mermaids, or other mythological beings. The Fire Witch. The Fire Witch is a practitioner of witchcraft whose focus and magical practice are centered around the element of fire. Fire witchcraft emphasizes harnessing the energies and symbolism associated with fire for transformation, purification, and creativity. Fire witches work closely with the element of fire, which represents passion, vitality, creativity, energy, and transformation. They view fire as a powerful force that can bring about change and renewal. They may create sacred fires for rituals and ceremonies, using flames as a focal point for meditation, prayer, and magical workings. Fire is often seen as a conduit for connecting with the divine and spiritual realms. The Storm Witch. The Storm Witch is a practitioner of witchcraft who focuses on harnessing the energy and power of storms in their magical practice. This type of witchcraft is deeply connected to the forces of nature, particularly atmospheric phenomena such as thunderstorms, lightning, rain, and wind. They have a profound connection to weather patterns and atmospheric energies. They may study meteorology, observe weather patterns, and develop an intuitive understanding of how weather influences energy and magic. Storm witches work with the elemental energies of air, water, rain, fire, lightning, and earth, the grounding effect of storms. They may invoke these energies in rituals, spells, and meditations to manifest change, cleanse energy, or charge magical tools. Psychic Witch. Psychic Witch is a practitioner of witchcraft who specializes in psychic abilities and incorporates them into their magical practice. This type of witchcraft emphasizes the development and use of psychic skills such as clairvoyance, clear seeing, clairaudience, clear hearing, clairsentience, clear feeling, and intuition for divination, energy work, and spiritual growth. They dedicate time and effort to developing their innate psychic abilities through meditation, visualization, energy work, and psychic exercises. They may work on enhancing their intuition, psychic senses, and ability to perceive and interpret subtle energies. Psychic witches often specialize in divination techniques such as tarot reading, pendulum dowsing, scrying using crystals, water or mirrors, rune casting, or other forms of psychic insight to gain guidance, clarity, and spiritual wisdom. Art Witch. An art witch is a practitioner of witchcraft who incorporates artistic creativity and expression into their magical practice. This type of witchcraft emphasizes the use of art, craft, and creativity as a powerful tool for spiritual exploration, manifestation, and personal transformation. Art witches view creativity as a sacred and transformative practice. They use various artistic mediums such as painting, drawing, sculpture, crafting, writing, music, dance, and other forms of creative expression to channel magical energies, manifest intentions, and explore spiritual themes. They infuse their artwork with symbolic meanings and intentions, using colors, shapes, symbols, and materials that resonate with their magical goals and spiritual beliefs. Each piece of art may serve as a talisman, spell, or ritual object imbued with magical energy. Urban Witch. The Urban Witch is a practitioner of witchcraft whose magical practice is adapted to fit within an urban environment. This type of witchcraft acknowledges and embraces the challenges and opportunities presented by city living while integrating magical practices that resonate with urban landscapes, lifestyles, and energies. Urban witches creatively adapt traditional magical practices to suit urban environments. They may find alternative sources for herbs, crystals, and other materials, utilize indoor spaces for rituals, and incorporate city elements such as street art, urban parks, and skyscrapers into their magical workings. They may connect with spirits and deities associated with urban spaces, such as city guardians, alley cats, urban wildlife, or spirits of historical landmarks. They may also work with deities of communication, technology, travel, and commerce that resonate with urban life. Chaotic Witch. An chaotic witch is a practitioner of witchcraft who embraces chaos magic principles and practices. Chaos magic is a modern form of magical practice that emphasizes flexibility, experimentation, and personal belief over adherence to specific traditions or dogmas. Chaotic witches utilize these principles to shape their magical workings and spiritual exploration. They believe that belief itself is a powerful tool in magic. They may shift beliefs and practices based on personal experimentation, intuition, and what works best for them at any given time. Sigil magic is a central practice in chaos magic and often used by chaotic witches. They create sigils, abstract symbols charged with intention to manifest desires or influence reality. These sigils may be created using personal symbolism, letters, or images. Historical witch. A historical witch who reconstructs and practices witchcraft based on historical records and ancient traditions, such as ancient Egyptian or Norse practices, engages in a form of contemporary pagan spirituality known as Reconstructionist witchcraft. This approach involves researching and drawing from historical sources, archaeological findings, folklore, and cultural traditions to revive and adapt ancient spiritual practices for modern use. Reconstructionist witches extensively study historical texts, archaeological discoveries, ancient myths, and cultural practices to understand and reconstruct the religious and magical beliefs of ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians or Norse. Traditional Chinese witch. The traditional Chinese witch refers to a practitioner of witchcraft or folk magic within the context of Chinese culture and traditions. Chinese witchcraft, often intertwined with Taoism, folk religion, and cultural practices, has a rich history dating back thousands of years. However, it's important to note that the term witch may not directly translate or align with the Western concept of witchcraft. Instead, it refers to individuals who practice forms of magic, healing, divination, and spiritual rituals within Chinese cultural frameworks. Chinese witchcraft often incorporates Taoist principles, rituals, and talismanic magic fu. Taoism emphasizes harmony with the natural world, cultivation of life force energy, and the use of rituals and talismans to influence spiritual energies and protect against negative influences. Chinese witchcraft places a strong emphasis on healing practices, including herbal medicine, acupuncture, and energy healing qigong. Traditional Chinese witches may specialize in the use of herbs, minerals, and acupuncture points to restore health and balance in individuals. Folk witch. An folk witch is a practitioner of folk magic or folk witchcraft, which is a form of magic and spiritual practice rooted in the traditions, beliefs, and customs of a particular culture or community. It is often characterized by its practicality, reliance on local traditions and folklore, and its accessibility to ordinary people within a community. Folk witches draw on the folk traditions, customs, and beliefs of their culture or region. This may include practices such as using herbs for healing, divination methods passed down through generations, and rituals for protection or prosperity. They emphasize practical magic that addresses everyday needs and concerns, such as health, love, fertility, protection, and prosperity. How about mysticism? Mysticism is popularly known as becoming one with God or the absolute, but may refer to any kind of ecstasy or altered state of consciousness which is given a religious or spiritual meaning. Mystics experience spiritual phenomena that are hidden from the senses. The physical world disclosed by sense perception does not exhaust reality as mystics understand it. Some mystics find the spiritual to be immanent within the world of ordinary sense perception, but others discount the perceptible world as illusion and attribute reality to the spiritual alone. Whatever the precise detail of the relation of the extrasensory to the perceptible, the hiddenness of the spiritual is an important characteristic of mysticism. Many mystics claim that their experiences are indescribable in human language. Language can refer to experiences as a kind of notational shorthand that enables other people who have had similar experiences to understand approximately what is meant, but it can never convey the whole content of an experience. The term mystic is derived from the Greek noun mystes, which originally designated an initiate of a secret cult or mystery religion. In classical Greece 5th to 4th century BCE, and during the Hellenistic Age in 323 BCE to 330 CE, the rites of the mystery religions were largely or wholly secret. The term mystes is itself derived from the verb myein, to close or conceal, especially the eyes or mouth, and signified a person who kept a secret. The related form of the verb myein appears in the New Testament. As explained in Strong's Concordance, it properly means shutting the eyes and mouth to experience mystery. Its figurative meaning is to be initiated into the mystery revelation. The meaning derives from the initiatory rites of the pagan mysteries. Also appearing in the New Testament is the related noun mystis, the root word of the English term mystery. The term means anything hidden, a mystery or secret, of which initiation is necessary. In the New Testament, it reportedly takes the meaning of the counsels of God, once hidden but now revealed in the gospel, or some fact thereof, the Christian revelation generally, and/or particular truths or details of the Christian revelation. The related noun of mustis or mystis means the initiate, the person initiated to the mysteries. According to Ana Jimenez San Cristobal, in her study of Greco-Roman mysteries and Orphism, the singular form mystes are used in ancient Greek texts to mean the person or persons initiated to religious mysteries. These followers of mystery religions belong to a select group, where access was only gained through an initiation. She finds that the terms were associated with the term Bacchus, also known as Dionysos, the god of winemaking, orchards and fruit, vegetation, fertility, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, and theater, which was used for a special class of initiates of the Orphic mysteries. The terms are first found connected in the writings of Heraclitus. Such initiates are identified in texts with the persons who have been purified and have performed certain rites. A passage of Cretans by Euripides seems to explain that the mustis initiate who devotes himself to an ascetic life, renounces sexual activities, and avoids contact with the dead. Such initiates were believers in the god Dionysus Bacchus, who took on the name of their god and sought an identification with their deity. Until the 6th century, the practice of what is now called mysticism was referred to by the term contemplation or theoria. According to Johnston, contemplation and mysticism speak of the eye of love, which is looking at, gazing at, aware of divine realities. In the Hellenistic world, mystical referred to secret religious rituals like the Eleusinian mysteries, were initiations held every year for the cult of Demeter and Persephone based at the Pan-Hellenic sanctuary of Eleusis in ancient Greece. They are considered the most famous of the secret religious rites of ancient Greece. The use of the word lacked any direct references to the transcendental. A mystikos was an initiate of a mystery religion, early Christianity theoria. In early Christianity, the term mystikos referred to 3 dimensions, which soon became intertwined, namely the biblical, the liturgical, and the spiritual or contemplative. The biblical dimension refers to hidden or allegorical interpretations of scriptures. The liturgical dimension refers to the liturgical mystery of the Eucharist, the presence of Christ in the Eucharist. The 3rd dimension is the contemplative or experiential knowledge of God. Until the 6th century, the Greek term theoria, meaning contemplation in Latin, was used for the mystical interpretation of the Bible and the vision of God. The link between mysticism and the vision of the divine was introduced by the early church fathers, who used the term as an adjective, as in mystical theology and mystical contemplation. Theoria enabled the fathers to perceive depths of meaning in the biblical writings that escape a purely scientific or empirical approach to interpretation. The Antiochene fathers, in particular, saw in every passage of Scripture a double meaning, both literal and spiritual. Later, theoria or contemplation came to be distinguished from intellectual life, leading to the identification of contemplation with a form of prayer. The conception of mysticism. From late antiquity through the Middle Ages, Christians used prayer to contemplate both God's omnipresence in the world and God in his essence. The soul's ecstasy, or rapture, in contemplation of God was termed a spiritual marriage. By Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, the greatest mystical authority of the 12th century. In the 13th century, the term unio mystica, or in Latin means mystical union, came into use as a synonym. During the same period, the range of objects of contemplation was increased to include the Passion of Christ, visions of saints, and tours of heaven and hell. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the enthusiasms of quaking, shaking, and other infusions of the Holy Spirit were also called mystical. In the mid-19th century, after the Romantic movement had shifted the emphasis in much religious thinking from theology to individual experience, a growing interest in ecumenism led to the invention of the term mysticism and its extension to comparable phenomena in non-Christian religions. The competition between the perspectives of theology and science resulted in a compromise in which most varieties of what had traditionally been called mysticism were dismissed as merely psychological phenomena, and only one variety, which aimed at union with the absolute, the infinite, or God, and thereby the perception of its essential unity or oneness, was claimed to be genuinely mystical. The historical evidence, however, does not support such a narrow conception of mysticism. Even within the history of Christianity, there were mystics such as Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite in the 5th century and the anonymous author of the Cloud of Unknowing in the 14th, for whom the most desirable mystical experience or perception was not of unity, but rather of nothing, or nothingness. Thus Saint Bonaventure, in addition to encouraging a program of mystical union with Christ in his death and resurrection, also recommended devotion to the wholly transcendent nothingness of Pseudo-Dionysius' theology. In the 14th century, Meister Eckhart, along with his followers Heinrich Suso, Johann Thaler, and Jan van Ruysbroek, all sought experiences in which their souls disappeared, leaving only the mind, emotion, or the will of God. In the 17th century, Saint Teresa of Avila, almost certainly in ignorance of historical precedents, demoted the communion described by Saint Bernard to the status of a spiritual betrothal, instead emphasizing the soul's disappearance in the spiritual marriage. The complexity of the historical record is multiplied exponentially when one includes other religious traditions in the survey, both Buddhism and Kabbalah, the esoteric Jewish. Mysticism, originating in the 12th century, emphasized nothingness rather than oneness, and the notion of oneness itself has many varieties in both Christianity and Hinduism. These facts are inconsistent with the postulation of a single unity or oneness that mystics everywhere experience or perceive. It is not that the absolute, the infinite, or God is one and mystics experience and perceive this truth. Rather, the data support a psychological interpretation regarding a tendency of the mind to unify its contents in different ways, resulting in slightly different experiences on different occasions. Mystics do not experience or perceive an objectively existing unity, rather they formulate their own experiential unities in different ways. The traditional conception of mysticism was finally abandoned by academic scholars in the 1970s. Since then, some scholars have rejected the category of mysticism as a fiction. The mysticism in Asian tradition. Some mysticism can indeed be defined successfully in terms of the experience or perception of unity with the divine. In Hinduism, for example, the hymns of the Rig Veda were composed in Sanskrit by members of the Indo-European population that entered the northern plains of India from Central Asia beginning about 1500 BCE. In the Vedic religion, the chief gods were Indra, the king of the gods Agni, the fire god, and Soma, the god associated with the hallucinogenic Soma plant. The major practice of Vedic religion was a sacrificial meal that the community shared with the gods or devis. Milk, clarified butter, curds, grains, the Soma plant, and domestic animals were immolated in fire. The person who drank the hallucinogenic Soma beverage was considered a sacrifice to the gods. He acquired intuitive, mystical insight and became one with the ancient primordial man, who in the Vedic creation myth had been divided into the many phenomena of the cosmos. In Tantric mysticism, the body of the deity may be visualized as being composed of alphabetic letters or as assuming a specific posture holding a jar of nectar or a book, for example. The mental image serves as a focus for the contemplation of pure consciousness, and a mystical reduction of experience to pure consciousness may ensue. The ultimate reducibility of everything to pure consciousness, belief in which is shared by Vaishnavism and Shaivism, can be seen as a logical compromise between the Upanishadic union of all being and the yogic quest for a unique transcendence of being. Hindu mysticism, in its various forms, identifies the unitive as antithetical to the material world. Mysticism in Taoist tradition. The Taoist mysticism of China locates the unitive in the perceptible world. The Tao means way or path is both transcendent and immanent, both spiritual and material. The Tao is unnameable and ineffable, yet it is present in and as all things. Although Taoists do not necessarily seek mystical experiences, for initiated Taoist priests, the whole of Taoism is mystical. The mystical nature of Taoism is indicated in the sacrifice of writings which is performed in a temple or other designated area. The ritual space contains a stepped altar that represents a mountain. The gods are assembled on the north, east, and west of the altar, and venerated dead and lesser spirits occupy the south wall. The chief cantor chants formulas of invocation, consecration, purification, elevation, and confession while beating rhythmically on a wooden block. What about shamanism? Shamanism or shamanism is a religious practice that involves a practitioner shaman or shaman interacting with the spirit world through altered states of consciousness, such as trance. The goal of this is usually to direct spirits or spiritual energies into the physical world for the purpose of healing, divination, or to aid human beings in some other way. Shamanism, widely practiced in the world's hunting cultures. Shamanism may be the oldest mystical tradition. At the center of the religion is the shaman, an ecstatic figure, male or female, who is thought to heal the sick and communicate with the spirit world. A shaman may address a question and thought to his helping spirit and then experience ideas that are interpreted as the spirit's response to the question. A shaman may also summon a spirit to enter his body, and the spirit may speak through the shaman's mouth. On such occasions, the shaman controls both himself and the spirit that lodges in and manifests itself through his body. In other cases, a shaman absorbs his helping spirit, gaining its faculties, capacities, or powers. A shaman who incorporates a hostile god or spirit may in alternating moments be in control of the situation, housing a raging metaphysical being within his body, and in other moments lose control and be possessed by the being. In Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey, Menelaus is implicitly in such a mixed state of uncontrolled possession and controlled incorporation when he wrestles with Proteus, the old man of the sea, and forces him to prophesy. In deep trances, when a shaman is oblivious to physical reality, he may undertake a spirit journey in a vivid, continuous visionary state. The shaman experiences himself in disembodied form, flying away from the place of the seance to a distant location to visit ghosts, spirits, or gods. The examples of shamanism and Hindu and Taoist mysticism demonstrate the difficulty in establishing a single definition of mysticism. Definitions of mysticism in terms of unitive experiences must include spirit possession within their scope, while leaving Taoism out of account. Definitions that emphasize unitive ideologies are able to include Taoism but exempt shamanism from consideration, even though many Taoist visions are variants of shamanic soul flights. To resolve the problem of definition, scholars of comparative mysticism have opted for inclusive approaches that discuss religious uses of alternate states of consciousness without further qualifications. Are alchemy and witchcraft the same thing? The word alchemy comes from Old French alchemy, or alchemy, used in medieval Latin as alchemia. This name was itself adopted from the Arabic word alchemia, is an ancient branch of natural philosophy, a philosophical and proto-scientific tradition that was historically practiced in China, India, the Muslim world, and Europe. In its Western form, alchemy is first attested in a number of pseudepigraphical texts written in Greco-Roman Egypt during the first few centuries. Alchemy can be interpreted as the process of transmutation by which to fuse or reunite with the divine or original form. Others trace its roots to the Egyptian name Keem, meaning black earth, which refers to the fertile and auriferous soil of the Nile Valley, as opposed to red desert sand. Alchemy encompasses several philosophical traditions spanning some 4 millennia and 3 continents. These traditions' general penchant for cryptic and symbolic language makes it hard to trace their mutual influences and genetic relationships. One can distinguish at least 3 major strands, which appear to be mostly independent, at least in their earlier stages. Chinese alchemy, centered in China-Indian alchemy, centered on the Indian subcontinent, and Western alchemy, which occurred around the Mediterranean and whose center shifted over the millennia from Greco-Roman Egypt to the Islamic world, and finally medieval Europe. Chinese alchemy was closely connected to Taoism and Indian alchemy with the Dharmic faiths. In contrast, Western alchemy developed its philosophical system mostly independent of, but influenced by various Western religions. It is still an open question whether these three strands share a common origin, or to what extent they influenced each other. In Hellenistic Egypt, the start of Western alchemy may generally be traced to ancient and Hellenistic Egypt, where the city of Alexandria was a center of alchemical knowledge and retained its preeminence through most of the Greek and Roman periods. Following the work of André Jean Festigiaire, modern scholars see alchemical practice in the Roman Empire as originating from the Egyptian goldsmith's art, Greek philosophy, and different religious traditions. Tracing the origins of the alchemical art in Egypt is complicated by the pseudepigraphic nature of texts from the Greek alchemical corpus. The treatises of Zosimos of Panopolis, the earliest historically attested author in 300 AD, can help in situating the other authors. Zosimus based his work on that of older alchemical authors, such as Mary the Jewess, Pseudo-Democritus, and Agatha Diamond, but very little is known about any of these authors. The most complete of their works, the 4 books of Pseudo-Democritus, were probably written in the 1st century AD. Recent scholarship tends to emphasize the testimony of Zosimus, who traced the alchemical arts back to Egyptian metallurgical and ceremonial practices. It has also been argued that early alchemical writers borrowed the vocabulary of Greek philosophical schools, but did not implement any of its doctrines in a systematic way. Zosimos of Panopolis wrote in the Final Abstinence, also known as the Final Count. Zosimos explains that the ancient practice of tinctures, the technical Greek name for the alchemical arts, had been taken over by certain demons who taught the art only to those who offered them sacrifices. Since Zosimos also called the demons the guardians of places, and those who offered them sacrifices the priests, it is fairly clear that he was referring to the gods of Egypt and their priests. While critical of the kind of alchemy he associated with the Egyptian priests and their followers, Zosimos nonetheless saw the tradition's recent past as rooted in the rites of the Egyptian temples. In Mythology, Zosimos of Panopolis asserted that alchemy dated back to pharaonic Egypt, where it was the domain of the priestly class, though there is little to no evidence for his assertion. Alchemical writers used classical figures from Greek, Roman, and Egyptian mythology to illuminate their works and allegorize alchemical transmutation. These included the pantheon of gods related to the classical planets, Isis, Osiris, Jason, and many others. In philosophy, Alexandria acted as a melting pot for philosophies of Pythagoreanism, Platonism, Stoicism, and Gnosticism, which formed the origin of alchemy's character. An important example of alchemy's roots in Greek philosophy, originated by Empedocles and developed by Aristotle, was that all things in the universe were formed from only 4 elements: earth, air, water, and fire. According to Aristotle, each element had a sphere to which it belonged and to which it would return if left undisturbed. The 4 elements of the Greek were mostly qualitative aspects of matter, not quantitative, as our modern elements or true alchemy never regarded earth, air, water, and fire as corporeal or chemical substances in the present-day sense of the word. The 4 elements are simply the primary and most general qualities by means of which the amorphous and purely quantitative substance of all bodies first reveals itself in differentiated form. Later alchemists extensively developed the mystical aspects of this concept. Alchemy coexisted alongside emerging Christianity. Lactantius believed Hermes Trismegistus had prophesied its birth. St. Augustine later affirmed this in the 4th and 5th centuries, but also condemned Trismegistus for idolatry. Examples of pagan, Christian, and Jewish alchemists can be found during this period. Most of the Greco-Roman alchemists preceding Zosimos are known only by pseudonyms, such as Moses, Isis, Cleopatra, Democritus, and Ostanes. Others authors such as Camarios and Chimes we only know through fragments of text. After 400 AD, Greek alchemical writers occupied themselves solely in commenting on the works of these predecessors. By the middle of the 7th century, alchemy was almost an entirely mystical discipline. It was at that time that Khalid ibn Yazid sparked its migration from Alexandria to the Islamic world, facilitating the translation and preservation of Greek alchemical texts in the 8th and 9th centuries. In Islamic world, after the fall of the Roman Empire, the focus of alchemical development moved to the Islamic world. Islamic philosophers made great contributions to alchemical Hermeticism. The most influential author in this regard was arguably Jabir. Jabir's ultimate goal was takwin, the artificial creation of life in the alchemical laboratory, up to and including human life. He analyzed each Aristotelian element in terms of 4 basic qualities of hotness, coldness, dryness, and moistness. According to Jabir, in each metal 2 of these qualities were interior and 2 were exterior. For example, lead was externally cold and dry, while gold was hot and moist. Thus, Jabir theorized by rearranging the qualities of one metal, a different metal would result. By this reasoning, the search for the philosopher's stone was introduced to Western alchemy. Jabir developed an elaborate numerology, whereby the root letters of a substance's name in Arabic, when treated with various transformations, held correspondences to the element's physical properties. China, the magic square of 3, was propagated to followers of Jabir ibn Hayyan at some point over the preceding several hundred years. Other commonalities shared between the 2 alchemical schools of thought include discrete naming for ingredients and heavy influence from the natural elements. The Silk Road provided a clear path for the exchange of goods, ideas, ingredients, religion, and many other aspects of life with which alchemy is intertwined. Whereas European alchemy eventually centered on the transmutation of base metals into noble metals, Chinese alchemy had a more obvious connection to medicine. The philosopher's stone of European alchemists can be compared to the grand elixir of immortality sought by Chinese alchemists. In the Hermetic view, these 2 goals were not unconnected, and the philosopher's stone was often equated with the universal panacea. Therefore, the 2 traditions may have had more in common than initially appears. In 499 AD, Tao Hongjing refuted Hong's statement that alchemy is as important a spiritual practice as Shangqing meditation. While Hongjing did not deny the power of alchemical elixirs to grant immortality or provide divine protection, he ultimately found the scripture of the 9 elixirs to be ambiguous and spiritually unfulfilling, aiming to implement more accessible practicing techniques. In the early 700s, Niden, also known as internal alchemy, was adopted by Taoists as a new form of alchemy. Niden emphasized appeasing the inner gods that inhabit the human body by practicing alchemy with compounds found in the body, rather than the mixing of natural resources that was emphasized in early Tao alchemy. Black powder may have been an important invention of Chinese alchemists. It is said that the Chinese invented gunpowder while trying to find a potion for eternal life. Chinese alchemy was closely connected to Taoist forms of traditional Chinese medicine, such as acupuncture and moxibustion. In the early Song dynasty, followers of this Taoist idea, chiefly the elite and upper class, would ingest mercuric sulfide, which, though tolerable in low levels, led many to suicide. How about Hermeticism and witchcraft? Hermeticism or Hermetism is a philosophical and religious system based on the purported teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, a Hellenistic conflation of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. The primary texts of Hermetism are the Corpus Hermeticum and the Hermetic writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. These texts cover a wide range of topics including cosmology, theology, astrology, alchemy, and magic. They were influential during the Renaissance and continue to be studied for their philosophical insights and spiritual teachings. The 3 parts of the wisdom of the whole universe. Alchemy, or the operation of the sun, is not merely the changing of lead into gold, which is called chrysopoeia. It is an investigation into the spiritual constitution, or life, of matter and material existence through an application of the mysteries of birth, death, and resurrection. The various stages of chemical distillation and fermentation, among other processes, are aspects of these mysteries that, when applied, quicken nature's processes to bring a natural body to perfection. This perfection is the accomplishment of the great work in Latin mean magnum opus. In astrology Hermetic thought, The movements of the planets are believed to have meaning beyond the laws of physics and actually hold metaphorical value as symbols in the mind of the All, or God, which have influence upon the earth, but do not dictate our actions. Wisdom is gained when we know what these influences are and how to deal with them, and this wisdom is astrology, or the operation of the stars. The discovery of astrology is attributed to Zoroaster, who is said to have discovered this part of the wisdom of the whole universe and taught it to man. Mythology, or the operation of the gods, is one of the two different types of magic, which are, according to Giovanni Pico della Mirandola's Apology, completely opposite to each other. The first is Goetia, black magic reliant upon an alliance with evil spirits, such as demons. The second is Theurgy, divine magic reliant upon an alliance with divine spirits, such as angels, archangels, and gods. Theurgy translates to the science or art of divine works, and is the practical aspect of the Hermetic art of alchemy. Reincarnation is mentioned in Hermetic texts. Hermes Trismegistus asked, "O sun, how many bodies have we to pass through? How many bands of demons? Through how many series of repetitions and cycles of the stars, before we hasten to the one alone?" In rebirth appears central to the practice of Hermetic philosophy. The process would begin with a candidate separating themselves from the world before they rid themselves of material vices. They are then reborn as someone completely different from who they were before, in good and evil. Hermes explains in Book 9 of the Corpus Hermeticum that nous reason and knowledge brings forth either good or evil, depending upon whether one receives one's perceptions from God or from demons. God brings forth good, but demons bring forth evil. Among the evils brought forth by demons are adultery, murder, violence to one's father, sacrilege, ungodliness, strangling, suicide from a cliff, and all such other demonic actions. In cosmogony, a creation story is told by God to Hermes in the first book of the Corpus Hermeticum. It begins when God, by an act of will, creates the primary matter that is to constitute the cosmos. From primary matter, God separates the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Then God orders the elements into the seven heavens, often held to be the spheres of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the Sun, and the Moon, which travel in circles and govern destiny. The God then created androgynous man in God's own image and handed over his creation. In the fall of man, or fall of Adam, man carefully observed the creation of nous and received from God man's authority over all creation. Man then rose up above the sphere's paths to better view creation. He then showed the form of the all to nature. Nature fell in love with the all, and man, seeing his reflection in water, fell in love with nature and wished to dwell in it. Immediately, man became one with nature and became a slave to its limitations, such as sex and sleep. In this way, man became speechless, having lost the word, and he became double, being mortal in body yet immortal in spirit, and having authority over all creation yet subject to destiny. In the philosophy, as above, so below is a popular modern paraphrase of the second verse of the Emerald Tablet, a compact and cryptic text attributed to Hermes Trismegistus and first attested in a late 8th or early 9th century as it appears in its most widely divulged medieval Latin translation. That which is above is like to that which is below, and that which is below is like to that which is above. In Prisca Theologia. Hermeticists believe in a Prisca Theologia, the doctrine that a single, true theology exists, that it exists in all religions, and that it was given by God to man in antiquity. To demonstrate the truth of the Prisca Theologia doctrine, Christians appropriated the Hermetic teachings for their own purposes. In God as the All. In the religio-philosophical Hermetica, the ultimate reality is called by many names, such as God, Lord, Father, Mind, the Creator, the All, and the One. In the Hermetic view, God is both the All and the Creator of the all. All created things pre-exist in God, and God is the nature of the cosmos, being both the substance from which it proceeds and the governing principle which orders it. Yet the things themselves in the cosmos were all created by God. Thus God the All creates itself and is both transcendent. So what are the differences between witchcraft, mysticism, shamanism, alchemy, and hermeticism? Witchcraft refers to the practice of belief in or the use of supernatural powers and magic, typically associated with individuals known as witches or practitioners of witchcraft. It involves rituals, spells, and the invocation of spirits or deities for various purposes, such as healing, divination, or influencing events. Witchcraft practices vary widely across cultures and historical periods, often involving herbalism, charms, and incantations. The mysticism is solely focused in pursuit or experience of direct communion with the divine or ultimate reality through contemplation, meditation, or ecstatic experiences. It emphasizes personal transformation, spiritual insight, and a direct connection with the transcendent or mystical dimensions of existence. While the shamanism is a spiritual practice involving a practitioner shaman who interacts with the spirit world through altered states of consciousness to heal, divine, and gain knowledge for the community. It typically involves rituals, ceremonies, and trance-like states induced through drumming, chanting, or hallucinogenic substances to communicate with spirits and address spiritual, psychological, or physical ailments. And alchemy is a multifaceted discipline that blends elements of chemistry, philosophy, mysticism, and spiritualism. Historically, it originated in ancient civilizations and evolved through various cultural and intellectual movements over centuries. One of the primary goals of alchemy was the transmutation or transformation of base metals, such as lead or copper, into noble metals, particularly gold. This process, known as the Great Work or Magnum Opus, symbolized spiritual purification and enlightenment. Alchemists sought to discover or create a substance known as the Philosopher's Stone. This legendary substance was believed to possess extraordinary properties, such as the ability to transmute metals and confer immortality or rejuvenation upon its possessor. Lastly, the Hermeticism, also known as Hermetism, is a philosophical and spiritual tradition based on the teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, a mythical figure who is believed to have synthesized Egyptian and Greek wisdom. Hermetism encompasses spiritual practices aimed at achieving spiritual enlightenment, union with the divine, and personal transformation. These practices often include meditation, contemplation, and rituals aimed at purifying the soul and aligning oneself with divine principles.